Okay, moving on to the next segment of today's show. I think there are many different teams across the NFL right now that are going into week 9 really needing a victory in order to bring some of their momentum that they gained early in the season to week 9 and the second half of the NFL season. And one of those teams in particular that I wanted to talk about today is the Tennessee Titans. And when we look at the Titans, I think overall we could all agree that they've had a much better year than most people expected them to. They had a big win over Buffalo, had a big road win over Minnesota. Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, Corey Davis, A.J. Brown have all been producing and playing some pretty good football. Now, unfortunately for the Titans, their defense hasn't really been as good as of late. But I do think if you were to ask me, can their defense improve a little bit and maybe regain some momentum this week is the week to do it because they're taking on the Chicago Bears. And we know that this Chicago Bears offense right now has really been struggling, especially with Nick Foles at quarterback. Then we look at their competition in the AFC South. For me, this is another team that I think would really need a victory this week, and that's the Indianapolis Colts. And the reason why I think the Indianapolis Colts need a victory is because I totally understand they're not coming off these same circumstances as the Tennessee Titans. The Titans have lost 2 straight football games, including one to the Cincinnati Bengals. And I do think that if the Colts lose to the Baltimore Ravens, then they'll start to get into a little bit of a panic as well. But Tennessee, they need this game bad. I think they're at home playing against the Chicago Bears, and I want to see them really come hungry and ready to play. And you could go a lot of ways in terms of which team needs the win the most, but I would say the Titans. They have to win this game. And I respect the Bears' defense, but you're at home. You're playing against Nick Foles. You're a good offensive team that should be able to score, I would say, about 20 points. And if your defense can't get anything going against Nick Foles, especially on third down, which is the one down that the Tennessee Titans defense has really been struggling with as of late, then it may just be time to pack it in with this defense because overall, that unit has not been good at all. They are giving up 61% on third down over the last 2 weeks. And keep in mind, normally, or I'm sorry, not even the past 2 weeks, that's their season percentage. And normally in the NFL, by the way, if you give up, I would say anything more than 45% on third down, that's considered to be bad. But I do believe if the Titans defense was going to turn it around against any offense in the NFL, then playing the Chicago Bears at home is a pretty ideal matchup when you look at this Titan team. I think they have to win because now in the AFC South, who has the edge in the division? Now, I picked the Colts to win the AFC South before the season started, but I still think the Titans win the division. Tennessee has the Bears this week, and the Bears are reeling. The Nick Foles situation isn't looking good at all. It doesn't look like he's going to be the guy that saves the Bears' offense, and both teams are coming off 2 straight losses. So something really has to give in this matchup. The Chicago Bears' offensive line is not good. If Tennessee's defense could get to the quarterback, maybe get some pressure, I think that would be a good sign. Jeffrey Simmons, that's a guy to watch out. And I think this is a huge game, Titans-Bears, for both teams because the difference between going 5-4 and losing 3 in a row and then 6-3 and going on the road to Tennessee is absolutely massive for the Bears. But at the same time, right, the Titans are tied for first, and whoever loses this game has now lost 3 games in a row. And I don't think you ever want to slide to that extent of losing in the NFL. 2-game losing streaks in the NFL could cause panic because it's a 16-game season, and it happens, and it does seem like a lot, but all in all, it's only 2 games. At the end of the world, everything's going to be okay. But if you lose 3 in a row, now you're starting to go down a path of possible free-for-all, and now technically, I think when you look at this game, it's a little more important for the Bears because they're 5-3, and the NFC wildcard picture is just a little more competitive than the AFC wildcard picture. But this game is big because the Tennessee Titans, after they play the Bears, listen to the schedule. They have the Colts, the Ravens, the Colts again. So they could be looking at either 5-4 or 5-5 or 5-6, and if they are, that is not good. The Bears, when they play in this game, they still have the Packers twice, but I look at the Titans and see a good team, but the Bears, when I look at them, they just haven't been able to earn wins, and there are some winnable games on the schedule, and they could have beaten the Saints as badly as they played. The game went to overtime, but the Bears win with this defense, and if they don't play at an elite level, they don't have a chance. The Titans are obviously going to need Derrick Henry to run. They have a solid offensive line, and I think this Bears-Titans game is definitely a winnable game for both sides. But going back to the Indianapolis Colts, I picked them to win the AFC South before the season started, but I still think right now I would pick the Tennessee Titans to win the division. Many people will say the Indianapolis Colts are a much better defensive team than the Tennessee Titans, which is definitely true, and that's what gives them the edge. And maybe that's true. Maybe the Indianapolis Colts just come out here and win the AFC South, especially that they're really going to have an opportunity at the Tennessee Titans now with 2 out of their next 3 games after this week going up against Tennessee. The Titans, we all know, have to be better on the defensive side of the ball, and it's never a good thing when the free agents that you brought in order to improve your pass rush, Clowney and Beasley, one is already cut, and Jadeveon Clowney is just overrated. He cannot get to the quarterback at all. That's never a good sign. And I think when you consider the fact that they play each other 2 of the next 3 weeks, it's going to be really competitive in the race. And this week, Indianapolis has Baltimore, Tennessee has Chicago. I totally understand that Baltimore and Chicago are 2 very different teams, but at the same time, I think both teams will provide their opponents with unique challenges in many different ways. And looking at both schedules, they are difficult. I do think the Titans' schedule is slightly harder with the Bears this week. They still have to go to Baltimore, to Green Bay, but then they also have Jacksonville, Detroit, Houston, and the Colts have Houston twice and Green Bay. I'll take the Titans to win this division. I think they run the ball, which helps when you know how to do that. That helps you when you play in colder weather. And I do think they are more set up to grind out wins come playoff time. And just long term, I cannot trust Phillip Rivers to win this division. And the Colts defense is good. I think Frank Reich is a really good coach. I think Matt Eberflus, there's a chance that at this time next year, he could be a head coach. And you especially know that the trend in the NFL these days is to hire the young, bright offensive mind like Arthur Smith, for example, the offensive coordinator of the Tennessee Titans. But I do think that Matt Eberflus, the defensive coordinator of the Colts, and the job that he's been able to do over the last couple of years with this unit and how much they've improved, I think Matt Eberflus has done enough to put himself in the head coaching carousel position, really, in that list of possible targets, and he's done a great job. And after this past week, the Colts now have all the momentum of these 2 teams. I understand it was only 1 week, but the Tennessee Titans did suffer an upset loss at the hands of the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 8, which after the Colts beat the Lions, allowed them to pull even with the Titans record-wise on top of the AFC South. And the Colts did take care of business on Sunday. They came off the bye. They beat up the Lions pretty good, 41-21. That's their 2nd straight victory and their 5th victory in their last 6 games. Meanwhile, also in the AFC South, Houston and Jacksonville were on a bye in Week 8 and remain the bottom 2 teams in the division. Well, while the Titans and Colts share the same record, I think the Titans still have a grip on first place because they're just the better team in terms of offense and running the football. But at the same time, you can make the argument the Colts are the better defensive team. At the schedule, the Titans have played and won 2 division games this season. I think that's another big factor here. When you compare that to the Colts, they have played and lost their only divisional game. That was Week 1 against Jacksonville. When you look at where every team in the AFC South stands after 8 weeks, it's interesting because the Titans are in a bad way right now after suffering these losses. They had their worst outing of the 2020 season so far in Week 8 in a loss to Cincinnati. And I do think in this game, it exposed a lot of problems for the Tennessee Titans. They have a tough matchup in Week 9 against the Bears. We spoke about that. And the combination of a loss by the Titans and a Colts win will put Tennessee in 2nd place, which obviously, if you're a Titan fan, is what you want to avoid. Following Week 9, the Titans also have a quick turnaround because next week is Thursday Night Football with the Colts for Tennessee. Looking at Indy now, they earned one of their more important and impressive wins of the 2020 season on Sunday, and they did it against a decent Lions team pretty handily on the road. The Colts this week, they take on the Ravens, who are coming off a loss in Week 8. The Colts could take over first place with the win and the Titans' loss. After doing battle with Lamar Jackson and company, Indianapolis is going to have to travel to Nashville to take on the Titans 4 days later, which is going to be tough. And then Houston and Jacksonville, I think right now we could all agree, are out of the race. But Indianapolis is playing with some momentum. We all know how good this defense could really be. And January now awaits some true, real tests for the Colts. They have, listen to this Colts schedule, the Ravens at home, the Titans on the road, the Packers at home, the Titans at home, the Texans on the road, the Raiders on the road, and this could be the longest. This is going to be such a huge game for this Colts team. Colts-Raiders on December 13th, the longest road trip of the 2020 season for the Colts. And the Raiders are right now in position to compete for a wild card spot and did beat the Colts in Indianapolis last season. Now, the Colts have already lost to the Browns, so losing another game to a team like the Raiders in the wild card race would lead to a lot of Colt fans feeling uneasy down the stretch. And they also have to host Houston, go to Pittsburgh, and then host Jacksonville to end the season. For me, looking at that schedule for Indianapolis, I'm not going to lie, it's kind of tough. They're going to have to take advantage of games against Houston and games against Jacksonville, which they weren't really able to do earlier in the season, week 1. But the fact that they still play at Pittsburgh, which is not an easy game, at the Raiders, which is not an easy game, and then at the Titans, home against the Packers, that's not easy. Tennessee's schedule, when you look at it, I'm not going to say it's easy as well, but it is a little easier, I think, when you compare it to Indianapolis. They host Chicago, host Indy, go to Baltimore, go to Indy, host Cleveland, go to Jacksonville, host Detroit, go to Green Bay, go to Houston. So Tennessee's schedule is tough, but I don't think I would put it in the same category as Indy. And both of these teams are 5-2 right now, and it's going to be a lot to watch down the stretch in the AFC South at the top of this race, because Houston has been much worse than basically everyone's expected. Jacksonville right now is not playing like a good football team. They've lost a bunch of games in a row. So really, Indy and Tennessee, who's winning the division, and why this division race is so important, because it's not a guarantee that whoever comes in second place is getting the wild card when you consider the Raiders have already gotten the hardest portion of their schedule out of the way, and the Browns have an easy, favorable schedule.